I can do just one thing in this video. I want to encourage you. There's way too much fear mongering going out there. Don't give in to the fear mongers. Most middle class retirees are doing just fine. What we do on this channel, we set up spreadsheets, we run numbers for people. We really believe this is a unique financial channel because we point out the actual numbers behind each of these different financial concepts, like the ones you see on your screen there. But I want to look at an actual example here. I'm going to take somebody that's ready to retire. They have $350,000 in their nest egg. Way, way short of $1 million. Everybody's saying you got to have $1 million or 1.4 million or whatever. I just want to run some numbers for you, show you that folks, that just isn't true. We're going to have somebody with the $350,000. They figure they've been used to making $6,000 a month, which would be $72,000 a year, and we're going to use a standard 75%. You need 75% of what you uh, were needed when you were working. So you need 4,500, which would be 54,000 a year. Folks, you got to take into account Social Security. Let's say, for example, you're a couple. One of you's getting 1,600, the other one's getting 1,000. That's 2,600. So in other words, of this 4,500 that's your expected expenses, you're getting 1,900 from your nest egg. So we're going to go ahead and increase that by 3% a year going down through here. And what we do is during the first decade of retirement, they call those the go-go years. So we're going to go ahead and do this 3% COLA. But the second decade, they call those the slow go years. You tend to slow down. I'm 73 years old. I can testify to the fact that we don't spend quite as much as we did when we first retired. So these are called the slow go years, and then you get to the no go years, where you finally get to maybe in your 80s, you just don't travel at all. You just want to stay close to home. So we're just going to do use those kind of percentages, down 10% the second decade, down 10% the third decade. And we're just going to go ahead and run the numbers. And what we do on this channel is use the returns for the last 100 years for the S&P 500, even including the depression type returns. And we say just how often, if we had those returns going forward for the last 100 years, how many times would you run into problems? Well, if we run these problems right there with 4,500 on this 350,000, that's a 6.51% withdrawal rate. And you can see with a 6.51% withdrawal rate, you would have a problem 22% of the time. This is how much money you'd have after 20 years. 20% of the time, you'd be running out of money. You can see it going down through after 10 years, after 20 years, after 30 years. Here's the actual graph showing you have problems in these different scenarios right here. Folks, I want to show you something here. If we would just do one minor change, it's just going to blow you away. In other words, what we're going to do is after negative years, if we would happen to hit some of these, what's called sequence of returns risk, if you first retire and you run into some negative years right off the bat, what we want to do is whenever there's a negative year, take what's called a negative COLA. Now we're just going to do that at a minus 3%. In other words, after positive years, you get a 3% COLA. After negative years, you just take a 3% cut. Don't give yourself a 3% COLA, rather take a 3% COLA. Yes, it would be a little bit painful, but you would really not notice it. Again, you'd be adjusting your withdrawals based on what the market's done in the recent past, so you don't run into money. Watch what happens. Right now, we got a 22% failure rate. I'm going to go ahead and update this. It's going to do it for every single year, and you're going to watch this number. Instead of 22% of the time running out of money, which you really wouldn't run out of money because you cut back expenses if you saw you run out. Now you're down to 10%. 10% failure rate. That's 90% of the time, folks, you're just fine. You got 350,000, which would be right along in here. And look at what you'd have after 20 years. In most of these scenarios, you'd have 500,000 right here. You'd have $1 million right up here. This just shows you how much you would have after these time periods. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, which I understand, because that's still a 5.65% withdrawal rate, what if we just went down $300 a month? Now we're going to get down below the 5%. Well, watch what happens now when we do the same scenario, negative COLAs, just taking a little bit less to begin with. Again, we came up with this 4,500 kind of arbitrarily, figured it was 75% of what you were making. Now it's 0% of the time you're running out of money, folks. Look at the graph now. Just making that minor little change, taking just a little bit less Who's to say that this 4,500 was the correct amount necessarily when you're used to 6,000 a month? They say to take 80% of that or 75% of that. We just took a little bit less than that. And look at that, folks. It's that $300 less. You have a success rate 100% of the time after 20 years and 98.6% of the time after 30 years because of 1929 was so horrible. You had the 4 down years. But folks, that's what it takes. You don't need as much as you think. You don't need to think, oh man, I'm not going to have enough because I only have this 350,000. I don't have $1 million. Folks, don't forget to take into account Social Security, and maybe you have a pension also. That would all cut back what you need out of your nest egg. And if you just would use negative COLAs, try to stick closer to the 4% rule. Uh, Here we even at a 5.49%, but then we got down to 4.75 when we took these negative COLAs and also a little bit less in the second and third decades. Folks, that's what we do in this channel. We just run numbers for people. We don't want you to be fearful thinking, I don't have even close to $1 million. I can't retire. Because that's what we do in this channel. We run numbers for people to show you how it works out. We use numbers for the last 100 years, and we just simply run the numbers to show you uh, how it really might work out projecting ahead with similar returns that happened for the last 100 years. Again, please consider subscribing and sharing this channel with others. Let people know about this channel. There's so many people that are living out there in fear that really don't need to. So many people that are working an extra year or 2 or 5 years because they think they don't have enough saved up because they don't have that $1 million. Please share this channel, especially this video with them. I got so many other videos you might want to watch just to see some of these other numbers working themselves out, just to see where you might be. But please share, please like, and thanks for watching.